Welcome to StoryUp. This is a long-form space for honest conversations about stories. The ones we live inside, the ones we carry for years, and the ones that continue shaping us even after they become books. I'm Dr. Marina Rivera, founder of Full Circle Press. I work closely with authors at many stages of their story's life, before a story is written, while it's being shaped, and after it's released into the world. StoryUp exists because I believe that stories don't begin or end with a book. They shape how we see ourselves, how we make meaning, and how we move through the world, often long before they're written and long after they're shared. Here, I reflect on what it means to steward stories with care, responsibility, faith, and discernment, sometimes on my own and sometimes in conversations with authors whose stories are already out in the world. If you're holding a story that matters or living with the one that's still unfolding, you're in the right place. Hi everybody. I'm Marina, and I am excited to be here for the very second video in StoryUp. And I was thinking on my morning run today, I was actually thinking about, I had all these ideas about the videos that I feel like I'm called to make and the stories I wanted to tell. And then I realized, like yesterday, I talked about kind of the origin story of Full Circle Press. But then I was just thinking this morning, like, how did we get here to where I'm making these videos and starting the Story Up project? And so I want to start just by naming why this space exists at all. Story Up did not appear overnight, even though I didn't tell anybody about it until after I had already posted my first video. I actually years ago really wanted to do a podcast, and I just got hung up in all of the logistics of it. Like, how do you, like, what platform do you use, and this and that. And this might sound wild, but one of the biggest things that was hanging me up was like the thought of like getting like video ready, right? Like getting, like doing my hair and makeup. It's not something that I do every day. And the thought of like getting video ready was just really a little overwhelming to me. I love to teach, but camera, like direct to camera, is not a space that I've traditionally lived a lot or been really comfortable in. So I had some like insecurities around it. And then also I just got hung up in just all the logistic, like the technical aspects of it. But then about 3 years ago, when I was launching our new Full Circle Press website with my team, I actually had the web designer put a place on there for Story Up, the podcast. And nothing's on the page. And I don't even think the page is visible, but I had like an image designed, and I had a mission statement written for it, and it just sat there. And I just kept wondering, is now the time that this is going to happen? Is now the time that this is going to happen? And the timing never felt right, not because it wasn't something that I really wanted to do, but I'm really big on, if I'm going to start something, am I going to be able to have the space to steward it well? So Story Up, we did not get here overnight. This was a dream that I had like years ago to do this, but this space really did continue to grow slowly, even before making my first video, through the work and through all of the collecting of stories that I've had the privilege to do. In some ways, I feel like I'm a collector of other people's stories. With a lot of my one-on-one authors, it's what I do. I listen to their stories and I help them reflect them back to the world through the books that they write and that we support them in writing. But and then just thinking about just where the future of my work and where I want things to go, like it was just something that like wouldn't let up off of me. And at some point I'm going to come on here and I am going to talk about what happens when we have this like burden, like whether it's a burden to write a book or build a business or I don't know, move to another country or do anything that just like won't let up off of us. It's different than a dream, and it's different than, I think, even like a calling. It's like it just like sits with you and it just won't go away. You can talk yourself out of it and do all these things, but it just doesn't go away. And so I feel like this idea was just something that wouldn't go away. And it wouldn't go away because in my work and in collecting all of these stories, I am so interested in like the story beyond the story. Like what contributed to really the person that is writing these words on this page that other people are going to read? Like what didn't get in the book and why? What actually caused people to take that leap into writing their books? And then I think too, just sitting with authors before, during, and after publication, it's been so humbling. And even though I think a lot of that is work that's like well suited for very private spaces of like coaching calls, there also is like, wow, like, have you told, like, someone will say something, I'll be like, have you told anybody this? Like, this is so cool. Or like, I think people really could learn from this. And also, I really have always liked long form content. I'm not on social media at all right now. I'm taking a complete break, but I am on YouTube and I enjoy listening to long form content. And it makes sense because I've always enjoyed like the longer narrative form of story. But what I started to see is that in my work, there really wasn't like, I didn't have a space to talk about the stories before they're ready to become books. And I am interested in like the process of the work, but also the stories after the book is out. And then really just that emotional and also spiritual weight of authorship. What does it mean to steward well? A lot of public conversations that I see, they jump straight to outcomes or lessons or like the success narrative, like what are the 3 things that you did that gave you success in this? And I have to be honest, there was a time when I thought like that's what I had to do because that's what I saw everybody doing. But I just kept coming back to this question, like, what isn't being said about story work? Like, what is feeling rushed or maybe flattened in a lot of the public discourse? And then another element of this is in the other work that I've had the privilege of doing when I haven't been helping people write and publish books is my work in education. And yesterday in the very intro video, I talked a little bit about my life as a teacher, that part of my life. But also, I've spent a lot of work I've spent a lot of time doing like reconciliation work in schools, doing school culture and climate work in schools, looking at how organizations, the people in organizations come together to understand each other better. And at the heart of all of this, there's an element of story to it. And so I just have a lot, I feel like that God has put in me that I don't, at least in this season of life, like have an opportunity to share. And I just want to share it because I just want to help people. And I want people to think more deeply about the stories that shaped them in their lives and how these stories interact with others. Even going back to my dissertation research that I did when I was working on my doctoral degree, my study was on how teachers' beliefs and life experiences shape their classroom practices, especially working with student populations that have been traditionally like marginalized or underserved. And so it just feels like a through line to a lot of my work. And it feels a bit like a very natural next step. I also think that going back to this idea of like, just the thought of helping to contribute to a space or create a space that contributes to this larger narrative about how we can steward stories in a way that feels authentic but not rushed. I think that when stories are hurried, even when authors' stories are hurried, sometimes the most essential part of what could be shared gets missed because people don't have the space to talk about them. Also, I think for readers or audiences, when stories are oversimplified, we miss the nuance. And I think so much of life is lived and grown and developed in nuanced spaces. It's funny, I have a small group coaching program and we've been working an author program and we've been working together for like a couple years and they have some of my sayings that they just like will repeat back. And I guess one thing I say a lot is instead of saying like, you know, this, but this, I say this and this. And I think that and it just isn't, it just holds space for some paradox, for some complexity, because I think one of the most beautiful things about being a human and having these human experiences is that it's a lot of like, there's a lot of complexity to it. But just because there's complexity to it, I also am really attracted to simple. Like, even when I was thinking about like, what is StoryUp going to be? And I had all of these ideas and I just felt like God was like, would you just keep it simple? Like, come on, share some stories of your own, bring on other people to share their stories, talk about the importance of stories, and just see what happens as a result. What's interesting is even in my walk with God, one of the most fruitful things for me from reading the Bible. I'm going through the Bible for the third time now, like the whole Bible, like not just like excerpting things, like reading the whole Bible and understanding it is like it's such a beautiful example of how God can speak through stories, but also how we can learn through stories. There's some work, and I'm not going to have I'm not going to remember who said this or whose work this is, so I'll have to find it and later come back and add it to the show notes. But there's this idea that stories serve as both windows and mirrors. So sometimes stories, I think I might have said this yesterday too. I say this a lot because I think it's such a cool idea that sometimes stories give us glimpses into other people's lives, very different than our own, and they can be a window, and in that window, that's where empathy is grown. That's where communities are built. That's where bridges are not just built, but also crossed and sustained and nurtured. And then also stories can be mirrors, and they can reflect back to us things about our own life that maybe we just didn't see. And so I think that this is just a lot of stuff. Even as I'm talking right now, I was like, gosh, this is a lot of stuff like I don't talk about a lot in spaces. And I really felt like it was time for some of these ideas and some of this work to have a public expression. And so not just living inside of client work, not just living inside private spaces, and again, just the opportunity. We're just living in such a wild age in so many ways. But one of the things that I think is cool about the age that we're living in is like, I literally said yes to an idea yesterday with nothing other than, if you all saw my setup right now, like I'm not in some fancy studio, obviously. I haven't figured out lighting or anything, obviously. Like I have like my computer, I have propped up on a couple of books. I have a couple of tools that are supporting the work, and like that's just it. And then I just like pressed play, and I'll just be able to put this out there. And I do believe that the people that I'm meant to have conversations with, I'll have conversations with. The people that God wants to draw into the space, I believe God will draw into the space. And I just think that's exciting. And these tools exist, and I think they can be used for a lot of good when they're stewarded responsibly. And so I don't see StoryUp as being like a teaching channel, because when I honestly think about it, like the least interesting part of a lot of the work that I do is the more technical, like how to write a book. And that might sound wild, but I help people do that, but that's not the stuff that I want to talk about all day long. I don't want to talk about I like to talk about like rhythms of work, and I like to talk about like structures around the work, but I don't want this to be, and I don't envision this to be, and I don't think I'm called to make this a like teaching channel per se. I also don't think it's like a framework in which everything is going to fit into these neat boxes. And I also do not think that it's like a launch platform. I don't even really know what that would be, but I don't feel like this is that either. But what I do feel like this is I feel like it's going to be a reflective space. I believe it's going to be a place for discernment and a place to let's say this 5 times fast, like a place to slow stories down and honor them. I think that this space is going to be a place where those of us who carry unfinished stories can come and be inspired by those who have finished some of the stories that they have to share. I think it can be a place for authors who are living with stories after publication and are kind of caught in that often lonely. It's both a very public space, but it can also be very lonely. Like you've put all your stuff out there, and now what? And that they can come and find community. I think leaders that are navigating meaning and care more about meaning than they do care more about relationship and meaning than they do about just like metrics and outcomes. And also people who are either exploring their faith or deepening their faith, and they are holding just this they're figuring out how to hold space for both like the tension of, okay, I have this story and I believe that God has given it to me and I need to get it out there, and also I need to wait and trust his timing. That's something we talk a lot about in my small group coaching program as well. And so, if this is you, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I hope that this space is able to do for some what some of my favorite YouTube channels have done and continue to do for me. I hope it's a place where, in all the noise of the world, that you can come and feel seen and feel heard, and that we can build something that really matters. And I hope that, again, it can be a corner of the internet where, even in the book writing and publishing space, we're not talking about how to become an Amazon bestseller overnight. We're not talking about how to work with the Instagram algorithm to make sure that your book talks go out to the people. I just even mixed platforms there. Obviously, we're not going to be talking about that stuff. Not that there's not value in it, not that there's not a space for it, but I don't think that this is going to be that. I believe that this is a place where there's going to be space for some presence, some permission to be, some permission to sit with the stories that have shaped you, and to be open and available to listening to the stories who have shaped others, and a place where we can just have even a deep respect for even the lifestyle of a story. I've said story like 100 times. Is that all we're going to talk about here? I don't know, because I also love to talk about traveling. I love to talk about living what I would consider to be a very bicultural life. I love talking about wellness. I love talking about decluttering and home organization. So I don't know what any of that has to do with stories. Maybe those things will show up here, maybe they won't. But I am making a commitment to show up because I feel like God has called me here. I hope that, as I close out this today, my hope for you is that you accept the invitation to come, to stay, to not feel like you have to act or perform. If you're writing a book, cool. If you're not writing a book and never dream of writing a book, also cool. You're welcome here. And I'm excited for this beginning. I'm excited for the stories that will unfold here and continue to unfold here. I'm excited for the stories, again, that I will share, that others will share. And I am also just really excited to know that in being here, and in today I'm alone, right? I'm here by myself right now. So this might sound kind of funny to say, but feeling like this isn't a place where we're having to figure it out on our own, that it's a place where we will be able to come and eventually develop some community. And and more than that, not more than that, also, because I don't think it's more or less important, but I think it's equally important, is part of the reason I'm also here is because I have examples in my life in this season of people just stepping out in faith and doing what God called them to do, and letting the outcomes be what the outcomes are going to be. And as somebody who long lived in very outcome-driven spaces, I love a good checklist. I love a good to-do list. Y'all, I don't even know yet what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, but I believe God's going to give it to me. Not tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. When will I be here? When will these videos be posted? That's not a set time every single day, but I am making a commitment to myself and to this project to show up for 100 days. 100 episodes. I was doing the math also on the run this morning. Sometimes I'll be very bold with the statement, and then I do the math later, because math, I just think in words. And I was thinking about it. I was like, oh my goodness. So that is okay. If I do this 5 days a week, that means that is 10 weeks is 50 days, 20 weeks, that's a long time. That's like half a year. But that's the commitment I'm making, and we'll see where that goes. But I'm excited, and I'm grateful for anybody who is going to come along this journey with me. So thanks for spending this time with me today on Story Up. Stories don't just tell us where we've been, they help us imagine where we might be going. If something in this conversation stayed with you, let it keep unfolding. The story is still at work. And until next time, I am Marina. This is the Story Up project. And when I'm not here, you can find me and my team over at fullcirclepress.org. Thanks so much for being here.